This is Gibraltar Today. It's known that Gibraltar's financial services businesses and its gaming businesses account for a very large sector of our economy and of jobs in Gibraltar. 2/3 of employees in the gambling sector are cross-border workers, and the sector is very keen to find out what the results of the treaty negotiations mean for them. And the Minister for Trade and Industry, as well as the Minister for Justice, and with responsibility for setting some taxation, Nigel Feetham, addressed a summit of industry professionals yesterday afternoon and is with us in the studio. Your main message, Mr. Feetham, is that it protects the Gibraltar economy.
Absolutely, Jonathan. It protects the wider economy. In fact, not doing a deal and being exposed to the risk of a hard border at the frontier would have been an existential threat for the economy of Gibraltar. It would have also been an existential threat in terms of the government's being able to sustain the level of healthcare, given the number of cross-frontier workers that work in Gibraltar. But specifically in relation to the economy, Jonathan, the gaming industry is by far the largest economic contributor to the economy of Gibraltar. So even if we put to one side financial services, gaming alone accounts for about 3,400 jobs in Gibraltar. Those jobs also create tax revenues for the government in terms of PAYE, and indeed the largest share of corporate tax, even when we take into account the record corporate tax receipts that I have explained to you in this program, the largest share, in excess of 50%, comes from the gaming industry. As you've rightly pointed out, 2/3 of all employment are cross-frontier workers. So in a hard border scenario, those jobs would not only have been at risk, but the operators that are based in Gibraltar, we think, and we've been told by the operators themselves, they would have to reconsider whether or not Gibraltar was the right jurisdiction for them.
So they might have got up and left.
I think it would have been most likely that they would. All businesses, Jonathan, need certainty. No business can operate in an uncertain environment as to whether or not their operations are at risk.
Mr. Feetham, you mentioned corporate tax there. Is that in any way affected by the arrangement?
Not at all, Jonathan. Corporate tax is not affected, and it's a very simple reason as to why that is the case. Gibraltar complies with the global minimum rate of tax of 15%. Again, I've explained that to you when I've been in this program in the past. And Ireland is having to review its own corporate tax rate as a result of the OECD global minimum rate. Their rate is 12.5%.
So there was concern within the gaming industry that, or certainly there had been some chatter about VAT, and you were able to tell them categorically no VAT on services.
Absolutely. VAT is a critical matter for them, not just the issue of the frontier. And it's critical for them because significant marketing services are provided from Gibraltar by gaming companies in an environment where currently there is no VAT.
With your indulgence, Mr. Feetham, I'd like to ask you a little bit beyond your strict responsibility as Minister for Trade and Industry and Justice, and more generally as a Gibraltar government minister. Put us in the room for the cabinet meeting when the Chief Minister brings to you the detail of the treaty, whatever he told you before he went to Brussels this week. What was the ambiente like, and what were the conclusions?
Jonathan, the ambiente was very engaging. The Chief Minister has been negotiating along with the Deputy Chief Minister, Joseph Garcia. They have both been negotiating this treaty for the better part of 6 years. So, of course, like Peter Caruana very ably said, I think in your program or in the Viewpoint program only 2 days ago, we've got to trust our leadership. I trust Fabian Picardo. Not only do I trust Fabian Picardo, I also trust Joe Bossano. Joe Bossano has been a staunch defender of the rights of Gibraltarians and on all matters relating to sovereignty for the last 53 years. So all discussions in the cabinet have been constructive. They've been positive. We've listened to what the chief minister has said. On occasions, obviously, we've questioned, we've challenged, and we have unanimously supported this agreement.
Mr. Feetham, I'm going to put a question to you and a comment by Dee, who has been in touch. Thank you, Dee. She says 17% minimum on the transaction tax, no VAT reclaims. Dee is reading that as her shopping getting more expensive. She says, cuesta abajo sin freno.
I mean, Dee, we've got to be realistic about this. In any negotiation, there are compromises. In every negotiation, there is give and take. You cannot be part of the Schengen area and obviously not comply with the Schengen customs-related rules. That is the price that you pay. I've listened to the Chief Minister explain what those arrangements mean in practice, and I am satisfied that the Chief Minister has negotiated the best deal possible. But let me say this so that people understand this, if I can. Jonathan, please. I know that the economy is very remote from people's day-to-day lives. Most people will not think about the economy. Most people will not think about the public finances of Gibraltar. We've got a budget in 2.5 weeks' time, 3 weeks, whenever the Chief Minister makes the budget date public. Let me tell you that before the government allocates any expenditure to health, to education, to all those things that matter to the people in terms of the service that they get, the public sector, the government needs to allocate immediately, working from the top of my head, around 92 million pounds to pay for public sector pensions alone. I've come to this program in the past and I've said that the monthly public sector salary of the government of Gibraltar is between 19 and 20 million pounds a month.
So recurrent expenditure. Pase lo que pase. No matter how much money comes in.
Pase lo que pase, Jonathan. The government needs to, as a first charge of any government revenues, needs to allocate in excess of 330 million pounds of the budget. That's a huge amount. On top of that, healthcare, education, and other items of budgetary expense. Well, without the deal that we've done, I can tell you that the risk for Gibraltar could have been extremely serious. So there are compromises, but we've got to look at the wider picture.
So your message to Dee is it might get more difficult in some respects. Speak to your government. We heard the Chief Minister say, ask us if you think that this is going to impact you negatively. He said to Viewpoint that an email will be set up. But bear in mind...
On the round, I do not think that on the round, all things being equal, that we will be worse off than we are today.
And we have to always compare it not with what we have today, but really with what we would have if there was a hard border.
Oh, well, absolutely. Jonathan, people talk about Gibraltar being able to weather the storms of the past. The Gibraltar of today is not the Gibraltar 50 years ago. I mean, we have created significant expectations within the community in terms of everything that the government does in respect of, as I've said, healthcare, public sector, education. Imagine putting that all at risk. Do we go back to where we were 50 years ago? How could you possibly do that?
Quality of life has increased very significantly.
Well, we all have expectations to maintain our current quality of life, but that quality of life wouldn't have been there if we had had a hard border with the worst consequences for the economy of what that would mean in practice.
We're speaking to the Minister for Trade and Industry and Justice, and we're going to put some of the public's questions to you, Mr. Feetham. Joey asks, will the transaction tax be applied across the board on everything? And he mentions food, books, fuel, water, electricity, etc.
Joey, put your question to the Chief Minister, and the Chief Minister will give you the clarification that you're seeking.
But in general terms, it is on all goods across the frontier. So maybe not electricity, but all goods across the frontier, right?
The Chief Minister will deal specifically with that question. That question doesn't fall within the my tax ministry. It falls under business.
But you've heard the Chief Minister say that the transaction tax will be instead of import duty, and
Yes.
it'll be at the lowest possible level within the EU, which is currently Luxembourg at 17%.
That is correct.
And you are satisfied. He said that he thinks that there'll be a boon for Gibraltar businesses. We've heard that some will have to adapt. Retail and wholesale sectors in particular will be a little bit exposed, and there will be a period of recalibration. But the Chief Minister said last night he expects there to be a boon for Gibraltar businesses. Do you agree with that assessment?
Yes, I would agree with that assessment to the extent that we have certainty in a treaty environment that obviously businesses will come to Gibraltar, businesses will grow. The reverse would have been the exact opposite. The reverse would have been potential catastrophe for the economy.
And in your speech to the KPMG gaming summit yesterday, Mr. Feetham, I believe you made reference to not just about today, but about future generations. How do you make that calculation and keep in mind the interests of future Gibraltarians?
I mean, you know, Jonathan, and I've said it here in this program on many occasions, and anybody that follows me on social media, that I think my primary responsibility as a minister, for however long I am in office, however short I am in office, I will only aspire and promote the best interests of the next generation. It's young people. We are creating a future for our young people in Gibraltar. We have an obligation to them primarily.
Mr. Feetham, this is not your area of expertise, but I know that you've been briefed by the Chief Minister. So tell me if I've understood this correctly. He said to Viewpoint last night that services are not covered by this arrangement. So only companies that are registered in Gibraltar to deliver services will be able to deliver services in Gibraltar. But he also spoke about there being an element of freedom within a certain radius for Gibraltar businesses to deliver services into Spain. Is that
to deliver goods into Spain?
Yeah.
I think is the right terminology.
You're right to deliver goods as a service, delivering goods.
Exactly. I think what the Chief Minister has said is that there is no right of establishment. So in other words, we have access to Schengen. It's Schengen access as an associate, effectively an associated member of the Schengen zone. And to that extent, businesses in Gibraltar will have access in goods terms to the whole Schengen area.
We're speaking to Minister for Trade and Industry, Nigel Feetham. If you're just joining us, we're on 200. A few more questions coming in, but I wanted to ask you about the removal of Gibraltar from blacklists. We know that there was good news on Wednesday from the European Commission.
Yes.
And we heard the Chief Minister say last night that he has a personal commitment from José Manuel Alvarez that Gibraltar will be removed from Spain's blacklist, as it should have, flowing from the tax treaty that Gibraltar entered into, or the UK and the EU entered into for Gibraltar,
Yes.
and that process is quite advanced despite administrative hiccups in Spain.
Okay, two unrelated issues there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, two unrelated issues.
But two blacklists.
Yes, exactly right. You're spot on. So on the second one, remember that Gibraltar is on the Spanish blacklist for tax purposes in Spain. Spain still considers Gibraltar as a paraíso fiscal, and therefore to that extent we are on their blacklist. We entered into a tax agreement with Spain where they undertook to remove us from that list. So therefore what the Chief Minister is saying is that he now has a categorical assurance from the Spanish government that will happen. He has said in the past that needed to happen in order for everything else to fall into place. In relation to your first question, Jonathan, the grey list, the European Union grey list, you may remember that I've come to your program again in the past on a number of occasions and I've explained the history behind that. Gibraltar was taken off the FATF grey list in February, March last year. That is for AML purposes, for anti-money laundering purposes. The European Union is represented on the FATF Council that takes the decision for jurisdictions to come off that list. We should have come off the list EU list, back in April, but the decision by the Commission to do so was blocked by the European Parliament. So I went to Brussels earlier this year in January as a result of the reconstitution of the European Commission. We've lobbied the Commission at the highest level, and I have said in the past that the Commission was very supportive as to Gibraltar's position in relation to these matters, and they had given me a categorical assurance that they would be submitting a delegated act, what's called a delegated act, which is a decision by the European Commission for Gibraltar to come off their grey list. That is exactly what happened last week. We've also lobbied MEPs, and I will continue to do so to ensure that we get to where we need to be.
So these things should result in Gibraltar's reputation internationally being furthered, and that can only be good for our economy.
Yes, that can only be good for our economy, Jonathan, but we must take into account that we should have come off that list back in April. In other words, unfairly, Gibraltar continues to be on the list. Will it enhance our reputation? Absolutely so. Is it unfair that we haven't come off that list? Totally correct.
All right, Mr. Feetham, last question before we let you get on with your day job. You were outside the number 6, the office of the Chief Minister yesterday, had a comment from Albert saying that he watched Viewpoint last night, and he thinks that Mr. Picardo has made great personal sacrifice and endured a very difficult process to get us this far. He trusts him, and we saw a very warm show of support from the GSLP party. Maybe you can just give us a quick sense of what that was like.
Absolutely. The party is fully behind the Chief Minister. The party is fully behind Feetham Picardo. We all agree that he has made huge personal sacrifices on behalf of the people of Gibraltar. So therefore, the atmosphere yesterday was jubilant, and we celebrated with our activists and our members.
While being realistic that there is a price to pay, that not everything in this agreement is going to be what we dreamed of.
There is a price to pay, Jonathan, because in every agreement there are compromises. But let me say that this agreement far exceeds even my own expectation when I was first briefed. Let me also say that actually we politicians pay a very high price as well, Jonathan. I have been in office for 20 months and I feel the continued stress and the continued pressure because we are a small community. People come to us with personal problems. We try to support everyone. I have a constituency office. We try to do as much as we can on top of our day job, on top of ensuring that we have a sustainable economy, on top of ensuring that we can pay public sector pensions, on top of ensuring that we can pay public sector salaries, education, healthcare. It's a big toll on us.
Yep, it's a difficult job, and you work for the people, and I'm sure that they're grateful for your time when you can give it. Mr. Feetham, thank you for joining us here in the Radio Gibraltar studio.
Thank you so much, Jonathan.